I'm going to tell you a little story about what happened the other day. An acquaintance of mine, she happens to know my sister's husband, and she said, oh yeah, he was telling me that his daughter is in New York at this dance school and trying to live her dream. And I said, his daughter? Well, here I was scratching my head internally going, I don't know of any such daughter. And this is my sister's husband. His daughter, who's 26 or something like that, has two babies, a 2-year-old and a newborn. So those are his grandchildren. I've met them and I know them, and I have an acquaintance with his children. My sister came into this man's life when his youngest child was 18. And so my sister played no role in parenting his 4 children. His youngest, as I mentioned, was 18 when they started their relationship, and their relationship, might I remind you, started out as an affair for a couple years prior to them actually getting married. So by the time they actually did get married, I believe this youngest son was in the Marines, but obviously not a minor. And my sister played no role in raising this boy. So the fact that my sister and her now husband refer to his children with his prior wife as their children and their grandkids just boggles my mind, because number one, it's just not true. It's not true. They are, if anything, her stepchildren. But she never adopted them, so they're not even that. Like, she played no role in raising them. So even if she hadn't adopted them, they're still not her stepchildren. Just because she married the man that donated the sperm and is the father to these children does not make her their mom or their children her grandchildren. So when I was talking to this woman, and she said to me, yeah, he was telling me about his daughter in New York, I think I had smoke coming out of my ears. It was like an adding machine going. I was trying to calculate in my head what the heck she was talking about, because this man has 1 daughter and she lives locally, and she has 2 babies and lives locally, as does her husband and her children. They're all together. So I'm like, is there a child, a daughter, that he never mentioned to my sister? And I start to internally, the alarms start going off internally, and I was like, what? And I said to this acquaintance, I don't know who he was telling you about. Are you sure he said his daughter? And she said, yeah, he was really proud. They had a graduation party for her and had a great big to-do for her and celebration for her going off and to this dance school. And I was like, I know of no such person in their lives. I've never heard of this person. But I was like, wow, there's someone I don't know about. And all of a sudden, in the midst of my absolute confusion, my brain came to a screeching halt. And I went, wait a minute. Oh, I bet he's talking about the young girl who, at the age of 2, was in his and his ex-wife's prior daycare that they used to run. This girl has not had a father in her life, so he has stepped into the role as a father figure to her and refers to her as his daughter, even though he had nothing to do with the birthing of this child and did not marry or into the family or anything of that sort. He is, I would concede, a father figure of sorts, but he went and told someone else, the public, that he has this daughter in dance school in New York City. I did not want to assume. So when my sister texted me a couple days later about something completely unrelated, I took the opportunity to say, hey, how are those kids that your husband tries to help out with and be a mentor to. And there's 2 or 3 of them from when he and his ex-wife had a daycare. She said, oh, we're so proud of her. She's at a dance school in New York City. And I went, aha, that answers that question, and boggles my mind why this man calls this young lady of 18 years old his daughter when he's not their dad. Talk about messed up. I'm like, hello. So what's even worse, and this is what hurts me, my sister did not even send my oldest son, who just graduated this spring as well, a graduation card, much less wish him congratulations. We never had an open house or a party. He didn't want one of those. But she never even sent a graduation card. We sent out announcements too. And we said, we're not having a party. He doesn't want one. Cards may be sent to his attention at our address, with pictures of him and what his plans for the future were. Never got a card, never got a phone call, email, text. She hasn't even wished him congratulations on his graduation. And here she is throwing a graduation party with her husband for this daughter that was in his and his ex-wife's daycare when she was 2 years old. What the heck, friends? Seriously. I don't know. I'm boggled. If you can explain it, please share with me. So this morning, my video, I had to cut it off and get going really quick because I was at work. As I mentioned, I've uploaded content recently that talks about truth and talks about the great responsibility we have as people who are trying to be healthy, how important it is for us to focus on truth. And I wanted to add on this little snippet to this morning's video because I feel like when I filmed this morning, I was in a state of great agitation and frustration about the situation. There's these speed bumps that happen, and we do have reminders that creep up of what it means to be healthy and certain habits or behaviors that we used to tolerate that are no longer tolerable, or things that we would turn the other cheek about. And at what point do we each set our boundaries for these behaviors? What one person tolerates may not be something that the next person tolerates. And so for each of us, it might look a little different. But for me personally, when I went through the counseling and when I looked at my past and the way I was raised, one of the big things, and I think this is a pillar amongst the mental health community with regards to healing from our pasts, is truth. In order to have healthy relationships, we have to have truth. We have to have honesty. We have to have a grasp on reality. We have to have a balance of logical and rational thinking and not let our emotions get carried away with us and not make decisions hastily and think kind of level-headed about things. So there's so many different aspects related to that word. That's a powerful, powerful word, and it's the word truth. And for me, truth is a huge part of my healing. And the reason being, I was raised in a home that at first glance, and as I was taught growing up, everything was all about honesty. But when I look back on my childhood and the way I was raised, it wasn't. I was raised in a very hypocritical home, and I don't say that to pass judgment on my parents. I feel as though I have been screaming at the top of my lungs for decades now about things that should be obvious to my family and others, friends and acquaintances and boyfriends and things like that, about what basic courtesy is and what kindness is and what respect is and how to agree to disagree. It's a daily practice for me to evaluate interactions with people. And I think that as a person striving to be healthy, that's the norm. Like, it's a daily occurrence throughout the course of any given day. It's always on your radar. You have slip ups, what I call speed bumps, where I overreact or I react emotionally, or I let something bother me that I can't do anything about, or I start to feel down, or I start to feel guilty, or I start to feel that shame. Those emotions and those injuries from the past sent to disrupt my healing and distract me from my healing and trying to upset me. And I think that's why focusing on truth and balance are so important. And that's why they're what I call pillars of healing. Because if we're in touch with the truth, then it's really black and white. And there's very little gray area. There's very few exceptions to the rule, so to speak. And one of the reasons that the situation with my sister and her husband bothers me so greatly, and why I probably came across as really wound up this morning, emotionally charged, so to speak, is I get very frustrated over the fact that they choose not to see the truth. And I can see the trend of what I guess I would call manipulation and lack of being able to see the truth in him and his life. And case in point, what I talked about this morning, if we strip away all the other factors about split families and adopted children and all this other stuff, we could simply say that this man was a father figure or a mentor or a male guidance in these young girls' lives that were previously as toddlers in he and his second wife's daycare that they had for a time. So it's not like he had no role in their life or no influence. But here's where it gets screwy to me, is these girls are in no way related to him by blood, as far as I know. They've never lived, this is the other part of this, they've never lived with him. He's never been a guardian for either of them. So there was nothing legally done. There was no court involved. So as far as his role as a dad or a father to either of these girls, he is not a dad to them. He doesn't even somewhat have the role of guardianship over them. These are two girls that, because their grandmother happened to know him and maintain contact with him since those little girls left his daycare when he and his wife had a daycare, she has either asked him to kind of be in their lives, or I don't know how he came to stay and be a part of their lives. The fact of the matter is, it's not his daughter. So you've got someone here with a very convoluted past, developing this relationship with my sister, who I believe is the forgotten child, and calling calling these two girls that as toddlers were in his daycare his daughters. And my sister is eating it right up too, just like she believed way back in 2012 that it was okay for her to be starting this relationship up with this married man. You know, she's the exception to the rule. It's okay for her, but it's not okay for anybody else, because there's a perfectly logical explanation. They never should have gotten married. He doesn't love that woman. They've been separated. They should have gotten their marriage annulled, blah, 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 blah. All these excuses for this guy who is married when the relationship started, but that was okay, along with everything else going on that I haven't even shared with you. There's that fact that apparently it was okay for them to have an affair. And then also this aspect of him calling these little girls who are grown now his daughters. And they're absolutely no relation to him. As far as I know, I don't believe they are. He certainly didn't raise them. He was never legally their guardian. So when we talk about truth, this is what boggles my mind, frustrates me, rubs me the wrong way, and just eats me up inside. When we find ourselves facing this kind of situation where we're going, but that's not true. That's not real. You got someone in your life, someone that you care about tremendously, who tells you that they believe strongly about something, who has strong beliefs about something and then they do something that's contrary to that belief, like my sister in this affair, that she strongly judges others about not having affairs, but she herself had an affair, and she's got a husband that refers to children that are not his own as his daughters. What about this situation does not throw up red flags? What about this situation seems normal? This is why we find ourselves getting so frustrated, because we're looking at this situation, whatever situation we're in, right? And we're going, this does not make sense. This is not logical. This is not rational. It's opposite of everything you stand for. It's not even true. Why aren't you just saying, like in this case, that this is a youngster you used to have in your daycare and you're so proud of her, the young woman she's become, she's in dance school and you're a mentor to her or whatever? Why don't you just say the truth of what it is instead of twisting it just enough to make it your daughter, which is not true? What is truth and what is not truth then? That's what happens with these people. And when I say these people, I'm talking about unhealthy people, people who are not good for us. They start convincing us that wrong is right and black is white, up is down. The truth gets distorted. All of a sudden, the truth is gray and murky, and we don't know what's what. And we slip into these relationships, into these problems. Then one day we wake up and we find ourselves drowning from this very unhealthy, toxic relationship that we're knee deep, elbow deep, neck deep, and then drowning in. And we look back at the past and we can see the red flags. We can see the warning signs. We can see these things that were kind of not really true, couldn't really trust that person, but we let it slide. We make excuses for them. And all of a sudden we get to this point of no return where we look back and go, how could I have been so stupid? And then we're left feeling horrible. We're feeling guilty. We're feeling foolish. And it's all because this person started out tiptoeing up to us in falsehoods. And we were like, it's no big deal. And we didn't put a stop to it from the get-go. Truth is truth, no matter how much someone sugarcoats it. And that's where we're going to continue to slip up as we're healing, if we're not willing to step up and tactfully and respectfully lay down the boundary of what's true and what's not true. I, for one, am not going to sit here and call those girls my brother-in-law's daughters, because they are not his daughters. Similarly, I'm not going to call his grandchildren my sister's grandchildren. They're not. She didn't raise the kids. The kids were adults when she came into the picture. Therefore, the grandbabies are her husband's. In order to be healthy, we have to be willing to face the truth. Not only do we have to be willing to face the truth, we have to be willing to acknowledge and accept the truth for what it is. Truth is not murky. Truth does not need sugarcoating. And that's all we need to realize. The truth can hurt, as the old saying goes, but I personally think that the truth can hurt a lot worse if we start out believing that the truth is murky. I think most of us would probably spare ourselves a lot of pain if we just accepted the truth and focused on the truth from the very get-go, instead of getting lost in the murk and the mire and the gray of what truth might or might not be. As always, thanks for tuning in to Whole Wellness with Ann. Take care of you guys. Bye.